Deep beneath the picturesque hills of Somerset lies an ancient subterranean world of caves that for nearly 15,000 years concealed a disturbing secret. Hidden in the darkness, archaeologists discovered gruesome evidence of what could have been an Ice Age crime scene. Hundreds of human bones, stripped of flesh, smashed, scarred, broken, and in some instances, skulls shaped into what looked like cups. The remains revealed something truly shocking. Thousands of years ago, our ancestors feasted on their own. Today, these remains are on display at the Natural History Museum in London. But working behind the scenes are a team of experts determined to unlock the secrets of the Gough's cave cannibals. I've been given special access to meet the team and get a glimpse of the incredible work they're carrying out. Selina, it is wonderful to see you again. Thank you for inviting me here.
Oh, you're very welcome. It's always a pleasure.
And what an array of things we have in front of us. I recognise that, I think. Is that...
This is a replica of one of the skull cups that's on display. Yeah. So, do you want to...
Yes, of course. I mean, do we know much about this and how it was crafted or anything about that?
Yeah, so obviously this is a cranial vault. And this would have been very carefully made to have kept this entire structure here. Would have taken a lot of skill, quite frankly. We know that they used sort of stone and bone and antler tools, and they would have used these to sort of cut away or knock out these things and make these percussion marks, as you see going round, to very carefully remove that part of the skull to turn it into this actually quite beautiful shape. Very, very controlled marks that we can see on these skull cups.
So this is the replica right there. And I'll
Absolutely.
Now.
Yeah.
And the real stuff, I guess, that we have in front of us.
Yeah.
Is that another one over there, another cranium?
Yeah. So this is another skull cup. I'm not even going to pick this one up. That's all right. This is an original. It's incredibly delicate. So you can imagine, the care that would have to be taken to create these. But you can even see on some of the back here. So this is what we would call a controlled percussion mark across here. Yeah. Or they would have used a tool to sort of knock that through. So it would have been like probably a stone flint or potentially a bone hammer or maybe an antler. But this would have taken huge amounts of care. But this is another original human skull cup there.
Also, there's more than one skull cup that was discovered.
Yeah, there are actually 3 skull cups found from this site. 2 adults and one from a very young child.
Feels like the skull cups will steal the show, but at the same time we have all these other remains in front of us. What else have we got here?
We actually have a huge amount of postcranial material that was found at the site. It's something like 200 bone elements or fragments of bone, but all in really small pieces. This is quite typical for what you see for the whole collection. This is just a small part of it. A lot of the materials here, it's not easily recognizable, as you say, but the majority of these are actually like leg bones. So these are sort of femurs, but then we have 2 arm bones here. We have this one, which is a radius. This is a forearm here.
Arm bones, leg bones, and of course...
And the mandible.
Regarding the date, how old do we think all of these remains are?
So these have been radiocarbon dated to 15,000 years ago.
So that's the late Ice Age at this time in Britain. What do we know about 15,000 years ago?
It was from a human perspective. It was a time in Britain at the end of the Magdalenian people. So these are Magdalenians. In terms of the environment, we know more about the environment from things such as the faunal remains in the cave at this time, but also things like pollen as well. A cold period, but this is where it started its warming. We're going into the warmer phases here because you've got humans. We think from this cave site anyway that there seems to be evidence of there being willow and alder and hazel, so like some woodland starting to grow back. But from the fauna, we know there is things like reindeer, there is red deer, and there's a lot of horse. But we still see some signs of Arctic species as well. So there's the Arctic fox and lemmings are still present. So it's that transition from a very, very cold period and then warming up into this sort of interglacial warmer times. It's the end of that period.
So what is the context of the discovery of all of these remains in Gough's cave? Were there animal bones as well, and then coming across all of these human remains at the same time?
Yeah, well, Gough Cave's got quite a lengthy history to it. It's been studied, extensively studied, but it kind of, the story of the rediscovery, in modern era anyway, was in the 1890s, when a chap called Captain Richard Gough came along and found the cave, but he wasn't interested in the archaeology. He knew nothing about there being archaeology there at the time. He was actually interested in making it a show cave. So yeah, like stalactites and stalagmites. And so he opened up the cave to show people, because it was quite an attraction in the Victorian era. And then in the 1900s, they found Cheddar Man in the cave. That's when they knew that they were potentially human remains. And it wasn't until the 1920s, 50s, and then the late 80s that people actually went and did proper archaeological excavations of the cave. And it was when they were doing these later excavations near the mouth of the cave. And so there was a bit of undisturbed sediment. And when they excavated underneath there, that's when they found these huge amounts of human remains. It's highly fragmented though, so it could easily have been sort of like lost if you weren't looking for them, or you weren't thinking what was of interest here. Because yeah, they're so small, and it was about 200 of these human remains.
I mean, it is quite a story in itself.
Oh gosh, yeah, no, it is. It's quite amazing, and the amount of material that they have from there.
So Selina, it feels like those skull cups, they can steal the show, but why are these bones, why are they also so interesting?
50% of these bones show signs of post-mortem human modification.
Okay.
Yeah, so we can see things like cut marks, you can see scraping marks, but some are really special, like this one here. So this is the human forearm, the radius. And if I very carefully turn this over,
Very gentle.
yeah, we can see along the side there, you see that? There are these zigzag marks.
Oh, there's a white line.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this has been post-mortem modified by humans. It's got this artwork on the side.
No way. Brutal kind of cut marks into it, but also art.
Yeah. And with this one in particular, we can see even through the work that people have done, researchers have done, they can see that the bone would have been defleshed and then filleted. Then the same tool that they used to do the filleting was used to make that symbolic art upon it. You know, the bone was chewed, and then it was also broken so that they could remove the nutrients from the bone, probably from the marrow and the grease from within it as well.
So they do the cannibalism, and then afterwards they come back and put some art on the bone itself.
It's kind of all part of the process, actually. It's more like a ritual process where it's all happening at the same time and together. So it's not separate. It just goes to show that these were actually really special to them. So this was more than just eating them.
The zigzag mark.
Yeah.
Is that a common artistic type that you see with these people as well?
So actually the Magdalenian people were pretty artistic. Yeah, we actually see quite a lot of different evidence of engravings on both tools and human remains and animal bones. We also see cave paintings, cave art, and figurines and modelling. These were a sophisticated group of people. And this is actually the oldest engraving on a human bone in the world. So it's very special.
So the cannibalism story is much more than just the skull cups. It's the legs, it's the arms, it's everything.
Exactly. And we think from the huge amount of bones that we had here, more than 50% of them show signs of human modification. So cut marks, so defleshing, so scraping, but also human tooth marks. So you can actually see some of the human tooth marks on here. Let me show you. I think this one of our leg bones here is a particularly good example. And if you look along here, you see these marks here?
Yep.
That's human tooth marks.
How can you tell? Because initially, I mean, I know it's not the zigzag, but it looks like the kind of a mark of a tool. How can you tell that actually that is left by a human tooth digging
Yeah.
a bit.
So human teeth obviously is looking slightly different to animal teeth, and the way that it's moved and the way that the tooth moves, the shape of the tooth. And so these have actually been incredibly carefully looked at using really high-powered microscopes. So they can really look into the pressure, the way it would move, and you can see by the shape that exactly what animal would have created these. But yeah, you can actually tell that these are human teeth marks.
I must also ask about the mandibles. I mean, do we also see cut marks on this one too?
Oh, yes. Yeah, no. We see cut marks on all of the mandibles. Indeed. Yeah. No, that's great. That's a good example there. So we can actually see, if you look around here, there are cut marks coming across here, around there.
Just see them.
Yeah.
Can you look at that?
Yeah. And we see these are very fine cut marks. And what we actually think is that, not to be too graphic, say okay, but that they probably removed like the fleshy parts, so things like the lips and the cheeks, and they would have removed the eyes. But this is a careful procedure.
I said it adds more gruesomeness to the story, but at the same time, more interest in the story as well.
Yeah, and also care. There's a lot of care that goes into this. This is not something that's done like quickly or brutally. This is something actually that's it's a whole process. Like it's a ritual.
I guess the next question is, why are they doing all of this cannibalistic eating of all of these remains?
Well, I mean, obviously there are all sorts of reasons for cannibalism. It might be for warfare, eating your enemy. It might be for hunger, or it can be for ritualistic behaviour. We don't think this is anything to do with like gastronomy or hunger, because alongside the human remains, there's lots of faunal remains at the site, and these are all signs of butchered as well in exactly the same way. So we know these people had access to food and nutrients in fauna. So it's unlikely that it's to do with them being hungry. And then when we see, like particularly with the skull cups, this kind of very careful way that this has been modified. And then we see the art. We see that there's carvings on there as well. When you start putting all these pieces together, it begins to kind of show that this is much more likely to do with a ritualistic behaviour and a form of funerary cannibalism. So something that they associate with something that you do after someone has died.
If that was the case, then these Ice Age humans weren't eaten to stave off starvation, but to celebrate their passing, to honour their memory. So do we know much about how people were living in Britain 15,000 years ago?
These people would have been hunter-gatherers. We know that they didn't live in Gough's cave, for instance, that they would have been travelling around. They would have been sort of semi-permanent or semi-settled, we say. But they would have like seasonally followed the prey as where the prey moved. So this is things like horses, deer, reindeer. Their living patterns would have followed the patterns of their natural prey. And so places like Gough's cave, we think is where they came back to seasonally. Maybe this is where the horses would come back to, or the deer would come back to. And we know that they had butchery at the site. And we know, well, potentially they buried their people at the site.
So Selina, what past research has been done on these remains?
These remains have been incredibly well researched. I think it's probably more research has gone on to these Paleolithic remains than certainly any other in the UK.
When you get the word cannibalism into it, you can't help but get a lot of interest.
Oh, well, they're interesting in their own way, just from being from the Paleolithic, because there are actually so few human remains from the Paleolithic. So the research that's been done on them, a lot of research has gone into just looking at the remains, where they came from in the cave, about the time period, so the dating. But also, once researchers started to see there was this potential for the cut marks on them, then it's about trying to understand what those cut marks actually mean.
This is really, really cool to see all of this. But what is the current research ongoing with these remains?
I'm an ancient DNA researcher, so for me, this is where we're getting into the DNA aspect of it. And we are starting to try and get DNA from these bones. So we've begun the process, and we've actually started to do some very carefully, I hasten to add, drill holes.
Drill holes?
Yeah. We actually drilled into some of these human remains very carefully. I don't think it's actually quite a small hole there, just a couple of millimeters.
Very neat.
Yeah, it's just there. And so we drill in very carefully into this hole to remove the bone powder, and then we extract the DNA from the bone powder. But obviously this is really old material, it gets harder. But yeah, this is what we're hoping to do, is to analyse the DNA from these people.
How many drill holes have you made? Have you done one from each of these to kind of get more of a sense of like the number and so on?
Not all of these. No. We very carefully have discussions with curators, because there's so many cut marks on these, and there's so many like really interesting aspects to them. You have to be very careful where you put a drill hole, so as not to get in the way of like the important other research that goes on in these samples. So we take a limited number, but obviously from the DNA, then we might be able to see if we have, 6 different genetic signatures. It's very difficult to tell how many people are in even this assemblage, but what we do know is we can assess the minimum number of individuals by looking at certain elements that can't be repeated. Probably 6 individuals, or minimum number of individuals from the one child skull cup. We also know that there are 3 adults. Again, we have the skull cups, but also clavicles. And then we have 2 adolescents. So minimum number of 6, but of course we've got a lot of bones here, there's a lot of fragments. So we really need another form of analysis to work out how many other people were there, which is of course where ancient DNA can be a helpful tool.
Selina and her colleagues have already uncovered remarkable insights into the lives of these prehistoric people. But it's the DNA that might finally provide crucial missing pieces of this gruesome puzzle. Leading the critical next stage of the investigation is William Marsh.
Hello, Will. Hi, how are you?
Very good, thank you. You're another of the leaders on this project.
Indeed I am, yes.
So tell me about your role in this research.
Selina has, as we know, drilled the bones. So what I'm looking to do is I'm looking to extract the DNA from the bone powder, and from that to tell who these individuals were. First question probably is, how many individuals were at the site? Now we know there are 6 individuals at the site. We've got this from the archaeologists who identified skull cups and femurs from 3 adults, 2 adolescents and a child. But given the fact that there's over 200 remains at the site, we expect that there to be far more individuals. And we can do this quite easily with DNA analysis, which will not only tell us whether these individuals are related, but can also differentiate between different individuals at the site.
So your main expectation for this research, is it to find out how closely related these human remains were?
The Magdalenian itself is a culture with which you see this cannibalism, this complexity of funerary behaviour, but we haven't actually found a direct link between the creation of the skull cups and the actual cannibalised bones. So although we've inferred that the cannibalism and the creation of the skull cups are linked, we actually have no sort of firm empirical basis for that. So one of the things we're also looking to do is to sequence DNA from the skull cup, sequence DNA from these cannibalised remains, to try to see whether all these bone elements were from the same individual, or if not, were related to one another, which again would indicate that this cannibalism is directly associated with the skull cup creation. Because as we know, they were cannibals. Were they cannibalising within the group, between related individuals, or if these individuals were unrelated, perhaps this cannibalism isn't as symbolic and ritualistic as we first thought, and perhaps there might be a degree of conflict associated with it.
So is there still a gruesome possibility that the people living in Gough's cave, they killed someone else and brought them into the cave and then just feasted on their flesh?
It is still possible, but there are a few reasons why we don't think that is indeed the case. So Magdalenian itself is a culture which is seen across Western Europe, and the indicative funerary behaviour is this cannibalism associated with the skull cups. Due to the complexity of the behaviour and due to the complexity of the artefacts actually found at the site, we believe that it's a ritual behaviour which is exclusive to this group, and the fact that it's in such high prevalence across sites throughout the whole of Europe indicates to us that it's actually a funerary behaviour, and that there isn't any degree of warfare. A behaviour very similar to how the majority of people in England bury or cremate their dead. This is just a more gruesome version of that, I suppose.
Very much.
Yeah.
And talk to me about the whole process then. Once the DNA is extracted, how do you then go about learning this information? Is it with state-of-the-art technology?
So once we extract it, we have to multiply it, because it's so heavily degraded. It's really, really short. If I take a finger prick of your blood and was to try to replicate it or extract the DNA from it, there would be millions and millions more times copies of DNA in your tiny little finger prick of blood compared to the DNA we're going to get out of material. So we have to amplify it, and then we have to sequence it again millions and millions and millions of times. We're trying to read this DNA, it's really, really short DNA, to give us enough of it essentially to tell who these individuals were related to and who they were similar to at the time across Europe.
Would it be possible to learn just how closely related they are? Would it be like father and son, or?
Yeah, it's incredible how far we've come in the last 25 years. Like if we generate enough data, we can quite clearly differentiate whether an individual is related to one another. So that's father, son, brothers, perhaps we have sister, aunts. We can tell that from DNA. And this has actually been something which has been really come to the forefront of ancient DNA research in the last 10 years. Ancient DNA has been around for the last sort of 40 years, but it's only really been in the last 10 years that the cost of actually sequencing this DNA has come down absolutely massively. That allows you to generate enough data to tell these distinct relationships apart.
And do you think, is there any expectation to learn more about these people, their ages and their genders as well, or what do we know?
So the ages is tricky. We would love to be able to tell the ages of someone, but unfortunately we can't do it with DNA, but we definitely can do that with sex. So obviously XX chromosome for a female, XY chromosome for a male, we can differentiate between males and females fairly easily.
Well, it sounds very exciting. So I'm looking forward to coming back here. How many months do we think?
I reckon 6 to 9 months. Fingers crossed we should have some results for you. And I would obviously love to share those with you.
Really, I can't wait. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
That was absolutely fascinating. I can't wait to see what this new research reveals about these Ice Age cannibals. We're going to be following it right to the end here on History Hit. Our thanks to Selina, Will, the Natural History Museum and the Longleat Estate for giving us access to these gruesome yet extraordinary artefacts. Remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel so you're notified whenever we release new films. And let us know your theories in the comments below. Are we looking at an Ice Age ritual? Or could we be looking at something far more sinister?